The return to the forgotten grounds. The night was colder than expected when the group of 4 friends, Daniel, Sarah, Michael, and Claire, stood before the rusting gates of the old circus. The iron bars were bent, vines curling through the gaps as if nature itself had tried to seal this place away. For years, the circus had been nothing more than a childhood memory for them, a place filled with colors, cotton candy, and laughter. But everything had changed after the night of the fire and the unexplained disappearances. The town had whispered about curses and restless spirits, but to the friends, it had always been just a story. Tonight, they had come to prove themselves braver than their fears. As Daniel pushed the gate open with a groaning creak, the air grew unnaturally still, almost as if the world outside had cut itself off from the circus grounds. Broken rides loomed in the distance. A Ferris wheel tilted at an impossible angle, its metal frame shrieking faintly in the wind. The carousel horses stood frozen mid-gallop, their paint chipped, their eyes staring too intently. Torn posters flapped lazily on the walls, the smiling faces of clowns now distorted into something grotesque with age. The friends exchanged nervous glances but forced laughter to hide their unease. Claire whispered, "It's just an abandoned fairground. Nothing more." Yet even as she spoke, Sarah swore she heard something faint, an echo, like distant applause. They dismissed it, choosing curiosity over caution, and stepped deeper into the circus grounds, unaware that the show had already begun. As the friends ventured deeper into the forgotten circus grounds, the night seemed to grow heavier, pressing down on them with a suffocating silence. At first, only the crunch of gravel beneath their shoes and the soft rustle of the wind filled the air. But soon, faint sounds began to weave their way through the darkness, strange, distant noises that made the group freeze in place. Michael frowned, tilting his head. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. At first, the others thought it was just the creaking of old rides swaying in the wind. Yet the sound grew clearer, soft, high-pitched laughter, like children giggling from far away. The laughter was followed by faint clapping, the kind heard at the end of a performance. Claire's hand tightened around Sarah's. "That's impossible. There's no one here." But the laughter persisted, moving around them as though invisible spectators circled their every step. Suddenly, an old, broken loudspeaker hanging from a pole crackled to life. Static filled the air, then a distorted voice spoke, metallic and hollow. "Welcome, dear guests, the show begins now." The sound froze them where they stood. The circus had been abandoned for decades. No electricity, no operators, no reason for any speaker to work. And yet, the announcement echoed across the empty fairgrounds as if spoken to a live audience. Daniel tried to steady his voice. "It's just a prank, right?" But deep down, each of them knew something unseen was watching, and it had just welcomed them to a show they would never forget. The group followed the faint echoes, their lanterns casting trembling circles of light across the cracked pavement. Soon, they arrived at the main performance ring, the very heart of the circus. Once, this place had been alive with dazzling lights, acrobats soaring through the air, and clowns tumbling for laughter. Now it lay in ruin. The circular ground was marred with black scorch marks, as if something had burned into the earth long ago. Shredded banners hung from the wooden poles, swaying like tattered ghosts in the wind. Daniel bent down, running his fingers over one of the strange, charred symbols etched into the dirt. "This isn't just fire damage," he muttered. "These look like markings." His voice trailed off as a chill ran down his spine. Before anyone could respond, Michael gasped and pointed toward the far side of the ring. For the briefest moment, they all saw it, a figure standing perfectly still under the fractured spotlight of the moon. It wore a crimson clown mask, its smile frozen in a grotesque grin. The figure tilted its head slowly, as though acknowledging them, before vanishing in the blink of an eye. Sarah's breath hitched. "Did you see that? Tell me you saw that." No one dared deny it. Their hearts pounded as an unspoken truth settled over them. This circus was not empty. Something lingered here, watching, waiting. And whatever it was, it had chosen to reveal itself. The friends, shaken by the sight of the masked figure, pressed onward, desperate to convince themselves it was only a trick of the light. Their steps carried them to the largest tent. Its striped fabric faded to dull shades of gray and red. The entrance flapped weakly in the cold wind, like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Inside, the air was stale and suffocating. The lanterns revealed rows of broken chairs arranged in a circle around the main stage. Dust and cobwebs clung to every surface, but the sense of abandonment was overshadowed by something far more sinister. In the corner stood rusted cages, bars bent, and doors hanging open. At first, they thought these cages once held lions or tigers. But as Claire raised her lantern higher, her breath caught in her throat. Inside one cage lay a heap of bones, human bones. The skull grinned hollowly at them, jaw cracked open as if frozen mid-scream. Daniel stumbled back, muttering, "This isn't right. This place wasn't shut down for accidents." Something else happened here. On the tent wall, smeared and dried, dark stains, a message sprawled across the canvas. "The circus never ends." As the words sank in, the friends heard it again, soft whispers, circling them like unseen performers closing in. The sound grew louder, overlapping with faint applause and the distant squeak of carousel music. The tent seemed to breathe with them, as though alive. And in that moment, they realized the circus wanted them inside. The whispers inside the cursed tent grew unbearable, weaving together into a chorus of voices. Sarah pressed her hands to her ears, her face pale. "Make it stop. Please, make it stop," she cried. Before anyone could comfort her, the lanterns flickered violently, plunging the tent into near darkness. Then came a piercing scream. Sarah's voice tore through the silence, raw with terror. The friends spun around, searching desperately, but she was gone. One moment she had stood beside them, clutching Claire's hand, and the next, she had vanished into thin air. "Sarah!" Daniel shouted, racing between the rows of broken chairs. His voice echoed back at him, but so did hers. Her screams came from everywhere at once. From above the stage, from deep within the shadows, from outside the tent. Each cry was distorted, as though multiple versions of her existed, each trapped in a different corner of the circus. Claire stumbled to the ground, trembling. "She's calling from all directions. How is that even possible?" Michael froze near the entrance, his lantern catching on something lying in the dirt. He bent down and lifted it with shaking hands. Sarah's scarf, torn and soaked with fresh blood. Before they could react, a sound rolled through the night, chilling them to the bone. It was laughter, high-pitched, mocking, and unmistakably that of a clown. The sound bounced from wall to wall, drowning out Sarah's fading cries. The circus had claimed its first victim, and the others knew they were next. Shaken and terrified after Sarah's disappearance, the remaining three, Daniel, Claire, and Michael, stumbled blindly through the circus grounds. Their lanterns swung wildly, casting warped shadows across the ruins. Every direction felt the same. Every path seemed to lead deeper into the maze of darkness. Finally, they found themselves standing before a small wooden stage, its faded curtains hanging in tatters. At first, it appeared lifeless, just another relic of the past. But then, a sudden creak split the silence. Strings jerked downward, and marionette puppets dropped into view. The friends froze. Each puppet looked disturbingly familiar. There was one with Daniel's blue jacket, another with Claire's braid, and a third in Michael's torn hoodie. Their wooden faces twisted into exaggerated smiles, mimicking their real expressions in grotesque parody. The puppets began to move on their own. Their wooden limbs jerked unnaturally as they reenacted scenes of terror, falling to their knees, clawing at invisible throats, collapsing as if suffocating. The friends watched in horror, realizing the performance was not random. It was a prophecy. Suddenly, one of the marionettes, the one dressed like Michael, slumped violently to the floor, its strings cut. At that exact moment, Michael gasped, clutching his chest. His lantern dropped, shattering, and within seconds his body went limp. Claire screamed, pulling Daniel back from the stage. But the sound of applause erupted, echoing through the empty bleachers, as if an invisible audience cheered the show. They weren't just visitors anymore. They were part of the performance. Only two remained, Daniel and Claire, running blindly through the twisted fairgrounds, their breaths ragged, their hearts pounding. Michael was gone, Sarah too. Every shadow seemed to mock them. Every creak of rusted metal felt like footsteps closing in. Lantern light flickered weakly as they stumbled toward the circus gates. But when they reached the entrance, the iron gates had vanished. In their place stretched a wall of endless blackness, swallowing the path they had come from. Claire pressed her hands against it, screaming, but it was solid as stone. Then, one by one, lanterns flared to life across the circus. They illuminated rows of seats surrounding the main ring. At first the seats appeared empty, but slowly, figures materialized, pale, hollow-eyed spectators dressed in tattered clothing. Their faces were frozen in lifeless grins, their hands raised in silent applause. From the center of the ring, a figure emerged. The crimson-masked clown bowed deeply, sweeping an arm toward the terrified survivors. His voice rang out through unseen speakers, calm and theatrical. "Ladies and gentlemen, our final act begins." The audience erupted in ghostly clapping, a sound that shook the air like thunder. Claire shrieked, clutching Daniel. But before they could move, cold hands reached from the darkened seats, dragging her into the crowd. Her scream was swallowed by laughter. Daniel stood alone, trembling, as the clown leaned closer. "Once you enter the circus," it whispered, "you never leave." The lights went out. The applause continued. The show would go on forever.